Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue sur Educast, le podcast d'Eduki qui vous raconte les coulisses des organisations de la Genève internationale. Nous retrouvons aujourd'hui Angela Cotroneo pour nous parler de son activité au sein du Comité international de la Croix-Rouge, le CICR. Mais d'abord, qu'est-ce que le CICR? Comment définit-elle la migration et quelles sont ses activités et son approche sur la question?
Thanks a lot for having me in this podcast. The International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, is a humanitarian organization, neutral, independent, and impartial. And we have been working for already almost 160 years, trying to strengthen protection and assistance for persons that are affected by armed conflict and other situations of violence. These persons also include migrants, people who move across borders, perhaps fleeing armed conflict or other situations of violence, but also trying to look for better opportunities, but still finding themselves in a situation of armed conflict because they get stranded there while they are traveling towards their intended destination. So what do we do when it comes to migration? First of all, the ICRC uses a broad description of migrants, including persons who, as I was saying before, move across international borders for many different reasons. It could be because they're fleeing armed conflict or violence, because of persecution, because they're trying to find better life opportunities, due to the effects of climate change, etc. And we look at these persons independently of the reason for their migration, for the humanitarian needs and for their vulnerability. So within our description of migrants, there are several categories of them. It can be labor migrants, it can be asylum seekers and refugees as well. Although, of course, we do recognize that these people enjoy specific protection under international law. So the ICRC works as part, of course, of the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. We don't engage in trying to encourage or prevent or discourage migration. Our approach is purely humanitarian. What we're trying to do is trying to bridge protection and assistance gaps affecting migrants, because we are present actually along main migratory routes, thanks to the fact that national society in particular are also present in quite a lot of countries all over the world, and ICRC as well through our delegations as offices on the ground. We try to ensure that migrants can enjoy the protection they are entitled to under several bodies of law, including, as I was saying, the specific protection that refugees and asylum seekers are enjoying. In terms of concrete activities, we are particularly present in countries affected by armed conflict and other situations of violence. We try to restore family links, because this is one of the main protection concerns that migrants face throughout their journey. We also visit migrants held in immigration detentions. We work very much together with national society. We also try to engage with states to remind them of their obligations under different bodies of law, to make sure that they can afford that they can grant migrants the protection that they're entitled to, and trying also to raise awareness of some of the humanitarian consequences that certain restricted migration policies may have on migrants along the route.
Madame Cotroneo est conseillère en matière de migration globale au Comité international de la Croix-Rouge. Elle y a travaillé dans différentes opérations, entre autres en Serbie, en Colombie, au Kenya et au Soudan. Elle était auparavant responsable des programmes du CICR en Afrique de l'Est, protégeant les personnes déplacées internes, privées de liberté, disparues et le rétablissement des liens familiaux. Elle a également travaillé auparavant pendant 2 ans avec le Haut-Commissariat des Nations Unies pour les réfugiés, le HCR, en Arménie. Elle est titulaire d'un master en sciences politiques de l'Université de Florence et d'un doctorat en droit international de l'Université Sapienza de Rome. Elle a co-dirigé 2 projets qui ont abouti à la publication de 2 rapports du CICR, l'un sur la mise en œuvre de la Convention de l'Union africaine sur la protection et l'assistance aux personnes déplacées en Afrique, la Convention de Kampala, et l'autre sur l'expérience des personnes déplacées en milieu urbain et la réponse humanitaire à leurs besoins, dont la publication est encore à venir.
So my work as the global migration advisor for the ICC is about, being the focal person for all issues that concern migration within the organization. So I'm trying to make sure that in-house, internally, there is clarity about our strategy and our approach, and of course trying also to support delegations in the field in continuously improving our response. So it's quite varied. It can go from trying to produce guidance for the field, or also doing some internal capacity building or training, or representing the ICC at some webinar, technical debates, or in interviews like this one.
Entre les visites des camps de réfugiés, l'aide aux migrants à retrouver leurs proches ou l'information à la société et le conseil ou le rappel à l'ordre au gouvernement, le CICR est autant actif sur le plan politique qu'auprès de la société civile, en plus de ses activités humanitaires partout dans le monde, mais surtout dans les zones de conflit et de tension. Le CICR a été créé en 1863 à Genève. Il est donc actif depuis presque 160 ans. Nous avons donc demandé à Madame Cotroneo de nous partager un fait marquant ou une histoire qui lui tenait particulièrement à cœur après tout le temps qu'elle a passé à travailler pour le CICR.
There is a recent story about a 16-year-old boy, Afghani boy, who had lost contact with his family in 2018 when he was crossing the border between Iran and Turkey. And then in July 2020, he contacted the Swiss Red Cross, the tracing service of the Swiss Red Cross, trying to see whether they could help him re-establish links with his families, particularly with his mothers and siblings. And so in the end, there was the usual research took place involving quite a number of national societies in several countries. And in the end, it was thanks to the Trace the Face website and the fact that the teenager had published his photo on this, saying that he was looking for family members, that we managed to reestablish the contact, because the family back in Afghanistan could see the picture. They contacted the ICC in Afghanistan, and then we managed to organize a phone call where they could see each other after 3 years of separations. And there are many stories, emotional stories like these of family that have been related thanks to the ICC and the Family Links Network.
Il faut savoir que ces agences de traçage et de recherche de personnes perdues ne sont pas nouvelles. En 1914, l'Agence centrale des prisonniers de guerre collectait déjà des informations sur ces prisonniers pour pouvoir aider les familles à les retrouver. Mais à la Première Guerre mondiale, les principales victimes et prisonniers étaient des soldats, là où, dès la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, la majorité des victimes étaient des civils. Et c'est une tendance encore plus forte dans les conflits d'aujourd'hui. L'Agence centrale des prisonniers de guerre s'est transformée en Agence centrale de traçage, la Central Tracing Agency. Toute la structure était maintenue mais adaptée à la recherche de migrants civils, car ces déplacements forcés sont aujourd'hui la cause principale de séparation familiale et de disparition d'un proche durant le trajet. Madame Cotroneo nous parle de ce programme Trace the Face du CICR qui, en collaboration avec les comités nationaux de la Croix-Rouge, coordonne les recherches pour relier les personnes réfugiées avec leurs proches comme elle nous l'a raconté dans son histoire. Mais l'humanitaire fait aujourd'hui également face à de nombreux défis d'ordre politique, sociaux et même sur le plan informatique.
The ICC, the movement as a whole, as well as many other humanitarian organizations that are involved in trying to strengthen protection and assistance for migrants, face quite a difficult challenge today that is related to the fact that the space for neutral, impartial, and independent humanitarian aid towards migrants is shrinking. And why this happens? Because we see that the topic of migration is increasingly politicized, and it's a very polarizing and polarized issue. And what happens is that, in some countries, for example, humanitarian actors may be criminalized. Humanitarian aid to migrants may be criminalized, or you can have authorities that request humanitarian actors to report migrants in an irregular situation that may have approached those actors to receive assistance. And of course, this entails a lot of dilemmas. This also is an obstacle to continue having a principled approach approach to migrants. And indeed, we've seen it with COVID-19, for example. There's been a recent study published by the Movement's Global Migration Lab, and it was about access faced by migrants during the pandemic in accessing services. And one of the barriers was exactly the fact that migrants in irregular situations were afraid of approaching authorities as well as humanitarian actors in order to receive support, because they were afraid of being reported and being detained, returned, etc. So that's of course a problem. Another problem is the fact that with all the push towards digitalization, etc. Humanitarian actors are also collecting, of course, data of migrants. Sometimes these are digital data, sometimes biometric data, and of course it's important to make sure that these are protected and that they are only used for humanitarian purposes and not misused for surveillance or counterterrorism or of other political or different objectives.
Les problèmes dont Madame Angela Cotroneo nous parle sont souvent attribués aux pays occidentaux. Par exemple, aux États-Unis, Scott Warren, un homme de 37 ans, a été arrêté et jugé pour avoir aidé des personnes sans papier en les accueillant chez lui sans les avoir dénoncées à la police. Les organisations d'aide aux migrants en Méditerranée sont également accusées de soutenir l'immigration illégale lorsqu'elles prêtent assistance aux personnes dans des situations dangereuses en pleine mer. Amnesty International dénonce à plusieurs reprises les arrestations de volontaires et la criminalisation des personnes prêtant assistance aux réfugiés. L'aide humanitaire évolue également avec les technologies à disposition. Voici l'exemple d'un projet que Madame Cotroneo se fait le plaisir de nous partager.
Yes, let me talk about RedSafe. This is a very recent project that the ICRC is actually testing this year in South Africa and Zimbabwe. The RedSafe is an app and a website that allows migrants, including refugees and asylum seekers who find themselves in a situation where they may need help or they want to approach the ICC. So they allow these migrants to approach the ICC in a safe and also user-friendly way, if you like. And these applications include what we call information as aid. So we use it to provide, through a safe channel, information to migrants, for example, about services that may be available in country of transit or in country of destination. Also sharing some self-care messages, or for example, some messaging, raising awareness of the risk of family separation during the journey, and some tips on how to try to avoid this. And another part of what is RedSafe is that we put at the disposal of migrants a digital vault where they can upload personal document, identity document, copies of identity document, of educational certificates. And this is, of course, very useful because like this, these documents don't get at least a copy of this document doesn't get lost or stolen during the journey, and this can be retrieved at any time by the migrants.
Nous lui avons ensuite demandé quelles qualités étaient requises pour pouvoir travailler dans le domaine de l'humanitaire.
So, delegates of the ICC, that's how we call ourselves, they can be deployed in different parts of the world. In countries, normally these are countries that are affected by armed conflict or other situations of violence, because this is particularly where the ICC is operational. Their responsibilities can vary according, of course, to the context, to the operational needs, etc. So I would say in terms of, let's say, technical expertise on the ground, this can really be quite broad. It goes from medical doctors to lawyers, to nutritionists, to people who have expertise in agriculture, engineers, etc. But it's particularly, I think, in terms of soft skills that I'd like to stress that, of course, the fact of being deployed in many different places and in very peculiar circumstances then require adaptability. It requires, of course, also the ability of work under stress, cross-cultural sensitivities, and because we are a humanitarian organization, I would say humanitarian motivation and empathy towards the people around you.
La situation du siège de la Croix-Rouge à Genève est non seulement historique, mais a également une importance stratégique.
Being in Geneva is an added value because Geneva is the world's humanitarian hub. It's also quite an important forum for human rights. This is where the UN Human Rights Council is held. There are also a lot of other humanitarian organizations here. It is also the place where UNHCR and the International Organization for Migration have their headquarters. So the fact of being in Geneva helps us to maintain contact with all these different actors.
Lorsqu'une organisation comme le CICR est créée, il y a toujours un but, et lorsque ce but est atteint, l'organisation n'a plus de raison d'exister, ou alors sa mission est redirigée vers un objectif, comme nous l'avons vu pour le cas de l'Agence centrale pour les prisonniers de guerre qui a réutilisé sa structure pour venir en aide aux civils. Lorsque nous avons demandé à Madame Cotroneo ce qui fait que le CICR est toujours aussi important, voici ce qu'elle nous répond.
War is as old as humanity. So until human beings will resort to armed conflict and violence in order to regulate, if you like, their relationships, then there will always be a need of a neutral, impartial and independent humanitarian organization that tries to alleviate the suffering of the people that are affected by these situations.
C'était Angela Cotroneo, conseillère en matière de migration globale du Comité international de la Croix-Rouge. Pour approfondir vos connaissances sur le sujet, retrouvez les sources liées à ce podcast et nos différents dossiers thématiques sur eduki.ch.